All right, click the links to join the channel here over at Subscribestar, now over at Odyssey. Thanks everyone over there. Odyssey's been really cool. So Dave Chappelle, stunning and brave, not so much. Let me crap all over Dave Chappelle, his fans, the trans community, and the MAGA normie community who thinks Dave making fun of the trans community is somehow important, or that Dave still doesn't hate them. He does. So I hate to defend the trans community, but I guess this is the one time I have to, and I sincerely pray to God that they never hear this. I think the odds are pretty good that there's nobody in the BLT community who's listening to this. So making fun of the trans community is not stunning and brave when it's now safe to do so. A few years ago it might have been, but now the tide has definitely turned against that BLT community, which is great if it gets people to stop sterilizing themselves. Because no offense, that's insane. It's fine to make fun of trans, straight, all the colors and religions, whoever you want, but it's not stunning and brave when the guy who's probably in the top 5 comedians and has the black privilege shield and the wealth shield. I mean, if he wants to, like, he could buy a club. Like, he's not going to get blacklisted from clubs when he could literally buy his own club and just headline there. Comedy in the past few decades, sort of since the 80s and the rise of cable, has slowly moved away from throwing grenades where it hits everybody to a sniping rifle. And to be fair, like, those grenades weren't always grenades. They were still, some of them were shaped charges, I guess. And by about 2005 to 2010, that was started to be the end of comedy because of social media and, unfortunately, the smartphone. Every soy boy pussy could pretend to be offended, marginalized, and oppressed victim of systemic whatever, or a lot of these consumer just people have been destroyed by prawn. That's another thing. Nobody ever thinks it does seem kind of weird that children have access to that material. It's like, doesn't anyone want? Oh, you can't do it. The First Amendment. Yeah, I don't think the founding fathers meant this just violent, degenerate, sick stuff that kids are seeing. Listen, adults, yeah, knock yourself out, but there's got to be a way to keep it from kids, right? I think there's a compromise between, oh, you're so puritanical Christian, you want to ban it. No, I just said that. I said, just find a way to keep it from people under 18. There's got to be a way to do that. Oh, yeah, there probably is. But it's odd that nobody thinks it's important enough. No. You got to turn these kids into consumers and inability to pair bond, and we got to destroy the West. Like, yeah, you guys are doing that very successfully. So anyway, that was the end of comedy. So it moved on to safer targets, men in general, Republicans, and mostly, obviously, just the blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, and anyone from Western Europe, pretty much, because those groups don't have power to cancel anyone. But if a comedian went after the groups above them on that privilege ladder, the power groups who can get a show canceled, eventually there'd be a Twitter brigade, and the forums would cancel on them. So they learned to stop doing jokes against those privileged people and just stick to going after white Republicans. Those Orange County people, am I right? Which got boring because comedy that's predictable is pretty. It's not comedy. It's like movies and comic books when you literally can look at the cover and judge by hair color who the antagonist or protagonists are, or the eye color. It's just that's. Oh, hey, look, a blonde character. Let me guess. Fucking Nostradamus over here. I am guessing he's the bad guy. Oh my god, how do you possibly fucking know that? Genius. Anyway, stuff occasionally did sneak through the cracks a little bit, but it got less and less. So black comedians could go hard on blacks, and to their credit, some did. But Trump 2016 absolutely destroyed. Trump was just plutonium. Every comedian was anti-Trump. Wow, stunning and brave. We need Norm Macdonald. We need him now more than ever. Oh, hey, you're making fun of Christians again. What next? White people? Am I right? And the evil blonde people who supported Trump. It wasn't comedy. It was just Hannah Gadsby level cringe. And there was a transition period where Sarah Silverman, Chelsea Handler, and what's that? The other fat one? Schumer, who were allowed to still make fun of like Chinese and blacks, but after 2020, the only target was blonde Aryans, preferably Christian. So comedy was the opposite of advanced. And 2020 was the nail in the coffin. But then enter one plucky, I'll say Dave Chappelle, instead of what I want to say. Anti-white for sure, but also fed up with the BLT community taking first place in the oppression Olympics and pushing blacks down a few steps on that hierarchy, which is what a lot of his comedy was about. He still hates Europeans, but he's upset that he's not at the top of the privilege ladder anymore. Yes, all these non-white people are privileged. The media projects everything. They manipulated the sheep via brainwashing, multi-generational brainwashing since about 1960, to say that you're privileged and the pizza supreme. You're not, of course. They are. Because they're the ones who have the control of the narrative and the ability to cancel you. A child should be able to point out that hypocrisy. If you were, then the bookstores, both brick and digital, would have books crapping on all these other groups that I can't even mention on GoogleTube. The bookstores don't have those books. They crap on you. 100% of the mainstream anything is anti-white. They ran the greatest psych op of all time. The privileged people got the country to focus all their hatred on mostly middle and lower class Euro people, Euro Americans, who have zero power. They're not overrepresented in control of power politics or overrepresented in anything whatsoever. They're underrepresented across the board. They're the best possible people you could have around you, and they're the target. They're the target of all this incandescent genocidal hatred. It's all so evil and brilliant. You almost got to admire the Schumer types. The other one, the political one. The media is so powerful. I think they're related though. Isn't she her nephew or niece or something? The media is so powerful they managed to make Karen a slur. If a fair woman sees a crime and reports it, they'll destroy her. The Covington Catholic kids showed you the hatred the anti-white media has for Europeans and Christians. Or the pregnant nurse who was getting robbed by the 5 teens. The initial story came out and social media tried to destroy her, but everyone looked at the teens and they were just not buying the story that the pregnant nurse was trying to rob 5 200-pound men. That was a bridge too far, even for the globalist narrative. But that's what social media and the mainstream media is trying to push. Everything they do is projection. And then people were getting on social media and they're explaining how the bicycle scam worked. The kids were stealing the bikes and stealing time from people. And to think like, yeah, this pregnant nurse who's visibly pregnant just got off a shift, who's still working, productive member of society. And the 5 teens who were just sitting around the bike thing trying to steal her bike. Yeah, she tried to rob those 5 200-pound guys. That's totally believable. If you're that insane, like even the people who are pushing it forward, like deep down they don't believe it. And the other thing, Dave Chappelle is not a left or right-wing guy. He's mostly just sort of a racist, but it's allowed because he's mostly anti-white. And he can be funny, but listen carefully to his jokes and compare the difference between the white ones and the black ones. He hates you. He's judging all of your tribe because of the actions of a few, and he wouldn't want his tribe to be judged that way. He's not exactly midwit humor because I'm one myself, but it's humor for people who had a glass of wine, half a joint, and they don't want to pay attention. They're just not noticing how lightly he touches on some areas or shades the truth and then goes for blood on other areas. And I kind of get the feeling even a couple of beers deep and, half a joint, after a while, you'd still kind of get a funny feeling about this guy. And you'd probably just dip out of his comedy. He doesn't seem to have any hatred for the gays. His point seems to be that the whole thing is silly. You can identify as something that's meaningless. You are what you are, and obviously it's deeper than that because it's a bullshit Frankfurt School psych op, a billion-dollar industry run by literal sociopaths. People are confused by high-functioning sociopaths or cults, and I go, yeah, this is a cult, one of those Jim Jones Kool-Aid things. And I go, no, it's not some guys in South America. It's Disney. It's worth $150 billion. And they go, it's not possible. These are high-functioning people. They have, expensive cars and houses, gated communities. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same mentality of a cult. So the BLT people here are the victims. I don't hate them. You can hear it in my voice. I don't even make fun of them because I've got free speech on Odyssey, Subscribestar, and BitChute, and even on those platforms, I don't make fun of those people. I say there what I'm saying here. They're the victims. They're people suffering probably from depression and who found an outlet in joining a very dark community that leads to problems in the future, I'll say. It's the Bolshevik found family concept. It's this huge psyop, and it's like, oh, we study Engels, Lenin, and Marx, and Moses Mordecai Levy. It's like, yeah, but did you study the critics of those people? There are no critics of those people. I've got the Communist Manifesto literally sitting right in front of me. You know you're in a Sodom and Gomorrah. It's a very slim book, actually. Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. You know you're in the Sodom and Gomorrah pre-war because all this self-harm cult is totally accepted. And if you're a nobody, sans black and wealth privilege, you just can't speak out against it. Maybe for the next prize, I'll send you some communist literature. Basically, it's good to read their stuff. Of course, it's good to read their stuff to see the insanity that they believe in. Basically, in America, and the thing is, all the communist stuff, all the books I have on Cuba is really interesting. Castro and Southeast Asia and China and Russia, the communists, the Bolsheviks, right? If you read Animal Farm, which is like a 100-page book, and then you go read all these other books, you're like, oh, this is all in Animal Farm. It's Animal Farm is even better than 1984 because it's shorter. It's short, and it's like, oh, this is exactly what Castro did. It's like changing the message left and right. Elections, ¿por qué? Anyway, so basically in America, the adults have left the building, and Mao's little red book children are running the show. You can hear me. I don't hate the BLT community. They're the victims of the dark forces. I'm not telling you not to cross-dress or wear makeup. If that's what you enjoy, knock yourself out. But step back and maybe think about the medical industry. Always ask yourself in your best Cecil voice, who benefits, and follow the money, though he'd probably say it in Latin because he's smart. He's an interesting guy because external forces are slowly pushing him to the right. Because when there's money involved, you're going to get doctors who will say and do anything as long as they get a $200,000 Audi. There are a lot of high-functioning sociopaths in the medical industry, smart people who will gladly take money to electively mutilate you or your child. The doctors are the monsters. The BLT community are the victims. 99% of this current community was created by media, social media reinforcement. It's not any more real than a Holland flower bloom. It's a social media contagion. All this stuff is only possible when the host material is sick. The phrase cleaned up for YouTube is that you get the corruption you allow. There's no garden without a gardener. So Dave Chappelle is a huge comedian because he's still a safe comedian, and it's pathetic that people think somehow he's taking comedy back. Some of the BLT community is too ridiculous not to lampoon, and now they're a safe target, where now I found myself in a weird position of pointing that out, and it's like I just hate to bring myself to defending them because it is so ridiculous, but I guess I'm placated because I know they're not listening to this. Anyway, so it was obviously a fad. It was probably going to run less than 20 years. People will slowly lose interest because they won't be getting the dopamine boost from social media like the youth. We're a BLT family. Our kid's a BLT kid. And, in a few years, even now, it's already, the bloom is off the rose on that. We're very much on the downward slide. It's like, what do they say? You don't want to be the last person killed in a war. It's kind of like that. You don't want to be the last person sterilized in this current psyop. So if half these people under 30 identify as some kind of nonsense, then it doesn't mean anything. If you're a teenager, you think this stuff is real. When you hit 30, you're going to wonder why nobody, for the love of God, stopped you, because everyone was afraid. It's like, oh, people are just filming what's going on in the street. There's some horrific event happening in the subway. It's like, well, yeah, nobody wants to be the next Daniel Penny. And it's that, oh, nobody wants to be the next Karen. If you're in the public light, oh, what happens? You get doxxed, you get fired, your spouse gets fired, your kid gets kicked out of school, your house gets firebombed. The media destroys your life. And like, all right, just sit back and film it. That's, there's not much people can do before the Civil War, because America is not a country. It's an economic zone run by sociopathic NGO people. People who will gladly push you to hurt yourself if they can profit off of it. And it's literally happening right now. You took an industry that was almost non-existent 30 years ago, and within the past 15 years, it went from two buildings, two industry centers, to a multi-billion-dollar industry. Yeah, you can bet you're going to get some shady people involved when there's that kind of money involved. When a doctor can do like a couple hours and get $40,000 from it, and that's and that's his new hot tub installation, or it's you get the eternity pool on his house in Beverly Hills or something. That's the kind of money they're talking about. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Of course, people will do the most horrific things for money. There are people who will do horrific things for almost no money. And people like me are literally Hugo Boss because we care enough to tell you perhaps you don't want elective surgery to remove your testicles. I'm the bad guy, and people like me are the bad guy who have no money involved, no money on the table one way or the other. That's the narrative the left wing kids have been brainwashed into believing. The $1 billion medical media conglomerate machine who profits off of this illusion, those are the good guys. And people like us who don't have any money involved with you whatsoever, we're the bad guys for telling you perhaps you don't want to remove your testicles. It's insane, but that's the power of propaganda, and it's generational propaganda. And it pretty much kicked into gear in about 1963 with I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched, when it switched from patriarchal family-centered storytelling to starting to destroy the patriarchy by starting to lampoon the pater and undercut the foundation for the family by making him a little bit more the butt of the joke. And it got worse and worse ever since about the early 60s until you get where we are now. It's like this stuff doesn't happen overnight. You have to look back. It's like, yeah, you can go back further than that, but that was kind of a big part of it. Okay, so this was actually the second take. I put the original take up on Odyssey and Subscribestar behind the paywalls because it's really hard to get through this without just not losing your mind. Because of all the things that are happening. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks to everyone who's been using that mailbox to send me little things that have helped the channel. You can send books if you want me to read a book. I'm a pretty good reader. You can send those. You don't have to just send comic books. And I will see you guys all next episode.